Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are new to Bragg, we just want to let you know that our mission is to provide a forum for collegial interaction in the research administration community. We do this by facilitating presentations by subject matter experts, creating an environment to foster peer-to-peer exchanges, and seeking and sharing best practices. It should be understood that during discussions, solutions or practices may be put forward that are not appropriate for everyone. It is our hope that members will feel free to voice any desired corrections or clarifications, but will do so in a kind and respectful manner. Today, we'll have two short presentations. The first will be a presentation on the new guidance for soft closeouts for awards that require prior approval for carry forward. And that'll be by Sanchita Powell and Hannah Holloway. The second will be a quick demonstration of the new IDC reconciliation tool. And as you all now know, recording is being made. It'll be made on the Bragg website once we get it pulled down, and we'll send out an email letting you know that you can listen to it, or you can share it with your coworkers or your colleagues that were not able to attend. So with that, I will turn it over to Sanchita and Hannah.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see that? It says soft closeouts, closed but still open.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So this is the same slide deck that Sanchita and I, along with Katie Hudson from CGA, presented at the RAC Forum in late November. So I believe RAC also posts their meetings on their website, but these slides are also available on the RAC website. We're just going to quickly go over some of these slides, and then we'll kind of talk a little more in depth regarding the RA role as to what's happening now with these soft closeouts. Okay, so soft closeout, the term soft closeout is used differently depending on who you are. Some people say soft closeout is just an interim report. For our purposes, we are talking about a soft closeout for an award that requires prior approval for any carry forward. So if your award is received budget year to budget year, sometimes the carry forward request, the remaining at budget year 1, can roll over into budget year 2, and sometimes that's automatic. But other times, the PI has to actually request that carry forward into the next budget year from the sponsor. So that is what we are specifically talking about today, is just those awards that require carry forward approval from the sponsor. Any questions on what carry forward is? Actually, I'm going to have Sarah and Susan monitor chat if you guys don't mind, because I can't even see chat right now. So we'll take questions. Yeah, we'll take questions at the end. Thank you. So soft closeouts, this slide says soft closeouts today. That was, technically soft closeouts at the end of November. There has been a lot of inconsistency with the BRS research administrators as well as CGA staff. We're both very open and honest that things have been inconsistent and we both need to do a lot better. Sometimes a chart field 1 is used, sometimes an activity code is used, sometimes de-obligation happens, sometimes it doesn't. So a group across campus with SPO, Phoebe IT, BRS, and CGA, we all met to kind of work through some of the inconsistencies that we identified and to come up with a better process. This isn't, I don't know if this is like a perfect plan. If there's any challenging pain points along the way as we move into this new process, I think it's important to bring that up to your supervisor so that way we can reach out to the controller's office in CGA and kind of work through that with them. Going forward, so as of, I believe, December 1st, CGA now has a new milestone description on the milestone tab in the award profile. Usually you would just see annual. And annual could mean that a closeout, a CCF was not required. Sometimes it means it was required. So to separate those that do require an annual report to be sent versus those that require a soft closeout, CGA will be adding a soft close milestone on new awards as they're set up for those awards that do not have automatic carry forward approval. CGA is going through the process on all the current awards, and as we get to that annual reporting time, you may get contacted by your CGA analyst and say, hey, this is actually requires prior approval for carry forward, and I need a CCF to be submitted. So they are updating that information as that annual report comes up. Once we hit that budget year end, the RA needs to submit a soft closeout to CGA using the standard CCF form and BFS that we all do for our closeouts, and you want to close to the appropriate general ledger month. After CGA approves that soft closeout, the RA is going to have to do some budget reallocations to move the amount that's left in the current budget year to a different CF1. We have a campus-wide CF1 established. P&D CFD stands for pending carry forward. And that's going to sit in that CF1 until we hear back from the sponsor. Then the RA needs to work with the PI to make sure that they actually are submitting that request to get that carry forward approved into the next budget year. The RA, some sponsors, that carry forward request is done through their portal systems. Other times you do want to let, you'll have to work with your SPO analyst to submit something to the sponsor. Either way, it's highly recommended that you use the request and award action function in Phoebe Search. And so that way that carry forward request is uploaded into Phoebe Search in case you win the lottery and somebody else has to take over your award. That way they can look in Phoebe Search and say, oh, hey, this has a carry forward request submitted, and everybody is on the same page. Okay, so after you submit the closeout, and you move the money.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is Gwen. Could you go back to the prior slide?
Yeah.
Can we ask clarifying questions at this stage? Because
sure.
This is in my brain of
Mhm.
30 some years of doing
Mhm.
research administration is ripe for complete chaos.
Okay.
So I want to understand how. I'm hoping you'll be able to say, oh, no, it's not chaotic, and here's why. So in no particular order, we may already have allocated budget to a very important CF1 that we need to use. Conflict with that CF1 right off the bat. We may not hear from the agency approving carry forward until well after the end date of the first period's increment, and yet normally that doesn't mean anything at all and work should go on. Is that going to stop because of any piece in here that CGA is going to hard code something to close because we haven't heard from the agency yet? And what about spending will go on if you're moving a certain amount of budget based on a certain month? That's all well and good, but more spending is likely going to happen on that same chart string for that original allocation that is going to change your budget again, making whatever it is that you forwarded it to SPO with a request and award action outdated. So I'll just stop there. That's like 4 different things that are.
Okay, yeah, that was a lot. So let me try and unpack this. I hope I didn't miss anything. So let's say you got your award, everything's been spent for budget year 1. Normally, correct? Maybe this is different for different sponsors, but in my experience, normally you get year 2 funding before you get the carry forward request approval status. So
Not necessarily. It can be completely in no particular chronological order. That's part of what makes trying to solidify a business process suspect. You're not going to accommodate the variations that are just all over the place. Did I lose you?
no, I was just trying to
okay.
think about I mean, it could be that because each ward is unique, and we can't. It's really hard to create a process that covers every single ifs, ands, or buts. And so we have to work with the the majority of the awards. And so I believe the majority of the awards, they'll get the year two funding even before the CCF is submitted sometimes for the year
Maybe.
one,
Maybe.
And for those that have budget years that require carry forward, that's on a future slide, but we are highly recommending that you use chart field ones for your budget years. If you do have a specific chart field one that you need to use for like programmatic purposes, Katie, I see, is on the call now, so maybe she can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that two CF1s can be mapped to the same activity code. So that way they're on the same billing. So if you have a chart field one for budget year plus a chart field one if you have a chart field one for a specific programmatic thing throughout the life of the award, I believe you can still have it mapped to activity codes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your budget years. Katie, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so in that situation where you're not using a CF1 to track budget years and you have more of a programmatic CF1, you would want to work with your CJ analyst to make sure that for each year, each budget year, you have the appropriate activity code, 01, 02, 03, and so on and so forth. At the end of that budget year, if you have an unspent balance, you do want to separate that. And that's why we're using that P&D CFD chart field one. So that way the amount that's pending carry forward request is separated from the available money that the PI can spend. You wouldn't want to get into a situation where you have $20,000 in pending carry forward, the PI spends it, and the sponsor comes back and rejects that. And now you're $20,000 overspent.
We can have,
Sorry, Goin. I was like, we were going to talk about this again in the future slides. That's exactly what Hannah just mentioned. So,
so when we
Yeah.
have a whole slew of expenses that post in, I'll make up a month, September. They post in September, but they have a doc date that is much earlier that is referencing the prior year, and therefore they're allowed on the first year's increment. They're going to affect the budget. How?
that is where the activity code are coming into place for CGA invoicing purpose. CGA, because the activity code are mapped with the chart string CF1 for that particular budget year, CGA, it will help CGA to invoice those expenses that you're incurring after that budget period, but is related to the previous budget period. That will help CGA the invoicing because it are mapped, and it helps with the activity code. And as I said, we were going to talk about this. Maybe it will help you more as we go to the next slide. So then you understand the process a little better. So just give it a wait for a few more minutes. Okay. So, I mean, we can clarify it further, and we can go more into details. If you still have questions, we can go into the RSO meetings, or, we can just talk, send me a email, Hannah and I. So we don't take more time during.
Okay.
this.
Got it. Thanks.
Right, thanks. Okay. So once the carry forward, once the PI submits the carry forward request to the sponsor is going to communicate back what their decision is. If the carry forward is approved, SPO is going to issue an award modification. After the modification is released, RA is going to reallocate the carry forward amount from that campus-wide P&D CFD back to the open budget year. So if your carry forward request was from carry forward from budget 1 to budget 2, you'll want to transfer it from that P&D CFD to the current budget year 2. If the carry forward funds are rejected and de-obligated via offset, SPO will still issue the award modification after they've received the notice from the sponsor. The notification will account for the new budget less the offset. The RA is still going to reallocate that carry forward amount from P&D CFD back to the open budget year. That's where it gets tricky. If the carry forward is rejected and the funds will not be de-obligated via offset, so I would say these two situations are the most likely, the most common, I should say. It is uncommon for carry forward to not be de-obligated via offset. If your sponsor comes back and says that they're not going to de-obligate via offset, the RA should notify their SPO analyst and provide all the documentation from the sponsor that they've received. If the sponsor information is adequate, SPO will issue the modification to reduce the budget, which will trigger CGA to de-obligate the budget. Oh, no, I lied, sorry. SPO will issue the modification to reduce the budget. The RAs can adjust the budget as needed between the CF1s if you're using the yearly CF1s. If the sponsor information is not adequate, SPO is not going to issue a modification, and the rejected carry forward budget is going to sit in P&D CFD until the end. If the carry forward request is not submitted by your PI, you can kind of go through the same process of notifying SPO. Depending on what that sponsor decision looks like, SPO may or may not release a modification. And that unrequested balance is going to sit in that whatever CF1 you have right now, which is another reason why we highly recommend using yearly CF1s. I know not every ward can do that, but it's the recommended way. Okay, now that was a really quick overview. I think you can hear the whole presentation with me, Sanchita, and Katie on the RAC website. I'm now going to turn it over to Sanchita so she can talk about how this impacts the award setup and management of these awards.
Thank you, Hannah. So many of you think that like a soft close is applicable on the NIH non-SNAP awards, but it's not. That's not the case. Like even if you are like not managing NIH awards, you can have like sponsors that can put restrictions on carry forward if there is an incremental funding is coming. Or even if you have just not an NIH prime award, you have an NIH sub awards. Or it can be of contracts where each budget year stands on its own, so their carry forward doesn't apply. So there can be situations, or you can have an award where carry forward restrictions may apply. So in this slide, we will basically talk about the steps that an RA needs to follow when there is like a sponsor's approval is required to move the balance from one budget year to another. So the first thing what the RA needs to do is to review the award document for guidance on carry forward. I know some awards, it's very clear. You just go through the award, PB award summary, it clearly states that carry forward is restricted or carry forward is allowed. But for some, you have to comb it through. And in some cases, it's just not very clear enough. So when the guidance is missing, please reach out to the SPO and CG analyst, because it will haunt you during the award closeout time. And trust me, I have experience with that. So if you are not clear, please reach out to your SPO and CG analyst. So once you have the confirmation that, yes, this particular award will need sponsors' approval to move the budget from one budget year to the current budget year, then what do you have to do? Step 1, RA needs to create a CF1 in BFS by clicking the tile chart field maintenance in BFS and to track the yearly expenses for that particular budget year. And when are you creating the CF1? Do remember one thing, that you have to select the attribute fund year. Do not click anything else, only select attribute fund year. Creating a CF1, as Hannah said many times, it is very important, and we highly recommend it to do it, because by running the report using that carry forwards, using that fund year CF1, you are only sharing with your PI the available balance for that particular budget year. Otherwise, you might end up like including a balance from the previous year for which we may not have received the carry forward approval, or for which PI may not even submitted a request to carry forward. So it is very important you run the report correctly, and for that CF1, creating a CF1 is very important. Okay, next step. So now you have created a CF1. So it's of no use unless you map it. So you go to the BFS, like again, you just go to the award budget entry under RA Award Grant Center to map the CF1. And when you are mapping, map it with program code 44 as well as with program code 80. So you are fully mapped it correctly. And you can also map with program code 72 if it's a non-federal award. But when are you at mapping that CF1? You have to remember the very important step, which is add a comment for your CGA analyst to also map it with the activity code corresponding to that particular budget year. So if it's a year one, so your CF1 will correspond to the year one, and CGA will map it with the activity code 01. Similarly, for year two, CF1 will be corresponding to year two, and CGA will map it with activity code 02. Now, the question is, why will you do so much extra work? What is the importance of doing this? This is important for the billing purposes. Activity code is what is triggering the billing purpose. It's triggering, it is what is connecting together. Like if the activity code is 01, then for each budget year, even if you have the CF1 correctly, so RA is thinking, okay, I have a CF1 corresponding to that budget year. So CGA will run the report by CF1 and do the invoicing correctly. Fortunately, that doesn't happen. CGA runs their report by activity code for billing purposes. So if you do not map it with activity code 01, activity code for each budget year, then it will automatically default to activity code 01. Like, for example, you are like, the RA is doing RA is doing a cost transfer after the budget year ended, like year one ended. So you are already in the year two, but you still need to do some kind of cost transfer for budget year one. So you get the final balance. So if you do not map it with the 01 and 02 correctly, then it will, even 02 will apply for 01, and CGA will not be able to identify the expenses for year one and year two when they are doing the final invoices for the budget year one, because all the expenses for 02 are now together with 01. So in order for CGA to streamline the process, separate out the expenses for year one and expenses for year two by mapping it with program activity code 01, 02, 03, and likewise. So, and yeah, that is, as I said, was the most important part for the invoicing purpose. And when your next step will be the creating the is mapping the CF1 PND CFD. So campus, as Hannah said, CGA has provided us the CF1 PND CFD to temporarily house the carry forward balance while we are waiting for the sponsor's approval. So, but it will not be any good unless you map it with your chart string. So when you are mapping that with your fund chart string, you can just map it with program code 44. Since it's just a placeholder CF1, you do not need to map it with program code 80 or anything else. Just map it with program code 44. However, if the balance gets approved and you are moving it back to your fund to the open budget year, then when you're reallocating that, definitely reallocate with direct cost and indirect cost. So while you're in the PND CFD, just map it with program code 40. But while we are moving it back to the current budget year, then do the reallocation and split it between direct cost and indirect cost. I think that covers most of the things, but the whole idea behind this is, I know this is a lot of work on RA's side. You have to create the yearly CF1, you have to create map it, you have to map the PND CFD. But the whole idea behind this, as Hannah said it earlier, that is to standardize the process. Now there is so much inconsistency because every RA is doing it in a different way. And it becomes really difficult when you are backing up somebody, or when there's a portfolio transitions, or it's CGA has to understand like how the process will be done. So that's why we came up with this process. And we are not saying that this is a perfect process. There may be some issues we may still face it. So if you think that there's something is not working, something can be do better, then please bring it up to Hannah and me, or bring it up to your supervisor, so we can make sure that we can improve the process if things are not working the way we thought it will. But the whole idea behind that is to make sure that RAs are reporting the balance that's available for that current budget year. So you are not misrepresenting the balance amount. Otherwise, so we are just only reporting, if it's for year one, only reporting the available balance to our PIs that is available for that budget year.
Sanchita, I'm sorry, can you just say what happens in the situation where we map with unique CF1s for programmatic purposes and we're definitely not using PND-CFD?
PND-CFD is just like a placeholder CF1. It is just when the carry forward balance just sitting there while we are waiting for the sponsor's approval. It has no other role. The yearly sorry, go ahead.
But if my budget that's in the systems has a unique CF1 already, and I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, you can run the report but when you are running the report, run that report by using that CF1. So that way you know how much is sitting on the PND-CFD.
But I'm not being clear. If I have $100,000 left at the end of year one, it's going to have a CF1 like A, B, C, D, E, F.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the CF1 will be. That's what's in Cal Answers. And if it's approved, it's going to be on that CF1. So how does one?
Yes. So while we are waiting for the sponsor's approval, you have to move that balance from your ABCD
Okay.
to PND-CFD. So
Okay.
once it's get approved, you move it back to the current budget year.
Okay. Got it.
So this is, as I said, it's a temporary. So you have to make sure you move it from ABCD to that PND-CFD. So that way, whenever anybody running your report can immediately figure it out, okay, this is what is sitting there. So this is the carry forward. We are still waiting for sponsors approval. This is the balance. We are still waiting for sponsors approval. So that way it's a consistent across the campus. Anybody running your fund knows what you are doing, how you are managing the award. Am I clear? Gwen?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. I
Awesome.
muted
Thank you.
myself.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Oh, sorry, there is a questions.
Yeah, I was just reviewing chat while you were talking. Henry gave us a really good tip, a reminder. When creating your chart field ones, it's also highly recommended to backdate the BFS effective date as far back as you might need to go, like more than 90 days before the award start date, if it's federal and pre-award or 90-day pre-award costs are allowed. Otherwise, you're going to run into validation problems if for whatever reason you need to move old payroll charges onto that CF1 that you created.
Absolutely. That's a very important point. And that's why many people trip, because if the start date is not right. So yeah, you have to back it at least 3 months prior to the start date of the award if it's a federal grant. Thank you, Henry, for this.
No problem. Miriam asked if we're going to create a set of instructions for this issue. They are already posted on the RA Wiki on the closeout page. There's a section for soft closeouts, and we have some language there as well as a PDF document, like a job aid you can download.
We can just update the slide for this CF1 information, because this is definitely a very important. Sorry, I missed it. Yeah. So that's why every RA, even if a new RA who doesn't know, haven't created the CF1 before, knows that they have to predate it by 3 months prior to the start date. So we can update the slides.
Andrew asks, it says, I've run into issues where I've included comments to my CJ analyst during the budget reallocation in BFS, and the BFS portal does not include any of my comments, which has created some mapping IDC problems. Someone at CJ, can you confirm if analysts can see the initiator comments or only approver comments?
Marina or Julia or Tess, you want to jump in on that? You know?
because I know like when I see comments from my RAs that submit to me for the supervisor approval, I'll see their comment about mapping to a specific, you know, I need a new project code or map to this activity code, and I'll reiterate that in my approver comment. So I'm not sure if maybe the initiator comments are not feeding through the system.
I don't think initiators have the option to put comments in. I've looked to try to do it and couldn't.
Oh, you know what? Thank you, Gwen. I misspoke. It's not it's not an initiator comment. It's more like in the budget description on that first tab in the budget reallocation. Yeah, that's like the big box. So you can like type whatever you want. A lot of times my RAs will put notes there. And I don't know, maybe CJ just isn't looking at them.
No,
Maybe it's an individual analyst issue.
On CGA side, I do not see comments. I only see comments in the history. I go up to the approval history and it'll say, please map or approved or, you know, map it to a project. I see the notes there, but not in the comment section.
Okay, so you guys can see the approver comments. Can you guys see that big budget description on the header tab?
Yes, but
Yes.
it's not specific.
Oh, okay.
So Hannah, like when Marina and I ran into this recently, we were trading screenshots and it didn't look like they saw the full like text box that as an RA I'm able to type to say that this is like a budget reallocation for whatever reasons in that first screen. Additionally, they can even see the comments that are I can affix to each line. Which was like where I was also creating things to say, hey, let's map this to project code, whatever. And all of the comments that I was able to, and maybe they're not comments, maybe they're text boxes or however you want to differentiate those ideas. None of those were making that readily to my CGA analyst, which required a lot of back end work because it turns out like all my comments weren't being, all my instructions, my whatevers weren't being seen by my CGA analyst.
Okay, that's good to know.
So Hannah,
Yeah.
this is Marina.
Hi, Marina.
So on our mapping requests, you know, I see it under award budget history and it says action comments when I've seen when you submitted or Henry has submitted in the past. But for some reason, I haven't seen Andrew's when it comes through.
Okay.
So and these are mapping requests, not budget allocation.
Right. I was
Okay.
just concerned that because like I think the comments field that the approvers are able to use are not available to the initiators. So like I've been trying to type in all the fields I can to indicate certain things. For example, perhaps going back to the topic today, like you know, if I'm supposed to indicate, you know, which each budget year or what each activity code is being mapped to, like other than the actual chart string itself, there's no field that I can type that apparently readily makes itself available to the approvers down the road.
Okay. Well, I made a note of this, so I'm going to circle back with Andrew and Marina and maybe loop in Katie and see if we can troubleshoot and maybe we can get an update to BFS so that there are initiator comments. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I know like the RAs you usually put in any comments to CJ as like the budget description, big text box. And then I'll see them as the supervisor that's approving the reallocation or chart field mapping, or the chart field mapping, I should say. And then I'll reiterate that in the approver comment box so that CJ is aware of our mapping needs in terms of those PC chart fields.
So while we are waiting for that, just make sure you email your CG analyst so that way at least like even if they don't see the comments, they're getting the information via email. So what do you think, Hannah? So
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
And that's been the workaround that Marina and I have been taking. It's like offline sending emails to one another, but in a way it's duplicative work, or at least it feels like it's duplicative work. When I typed it into BFS at some point or other.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, this is really good feedback, and I think we can take this to you know, like BFS team and controller's office and see if we can get something updated. Thank you, Andrew, for letting us know about that. I just went through.
Is there can I ask another?
Well, I was going through the questions that are in chat real quick, if you don't mind. Will there be a template for the budget year CF1s? Yasmin, I think you would want to discuss that with your own region. I think regions have some regions have specific formatting for certain things like speed types and chart field ones and that sort of thing. So I would say definitely check with your supervisor and region. Except for the P&D CFD, that one's static. Oh, yes, thank you, Sarah, for those in URSO. The guidance for the soft closeouts is on WikiHub as well as URSO, or RA Wiki as well as URSO Hub. Go through the initial subscriptions. Okay, yeah. Okay, Gwen, sorry, what was your question?
Thank you. So what happens in the case where, let's say you're at the end of your year one period, you have $100,000 left. You move that budget to the CF1, and over the following 2 to 3 to 4 months, expenses post with the correct doc date for the year one period, which would effectively change the available budget because those expenses should be subtracted from the 100,000 that you just moved earlier.
Well, you
to
would
this.
have wanted to include those expenses in the year one
You wouldn't know about them.
CCF.
You wouldn't
Then
know
you would have
about
to
them.
revise your CCF, I would imagine.
Yes, you have to submit.
This is what, yeah, this is why it's important that we
You,
have this discussion so you can prepare for the end of each budget year in advance. And you can, I've seen folks accrue for the soft closeout, so that way you, if you know that there's something coming up, you can tell your PI, hey, we need to send in, you can explain soft closeout, we need to send in final year one expenditures, this is what we have so far, do we have anything else? And you can actually accrue on the correct ledger month for any final expenses that you want to capture in that soft closeout.
I don't think it's going to work that way, though. The analogy that would maybe make the point is that we, at the end of the award, the full award, all years, we have a 90 to 120 day grace period to make adjustments. So the same thing, and expenses can absolutely post after the end date of the award and yet be allowable and acceptable and affect the budget balance. So you're going to have the same situations. You're going to, maybe you need to move payroll, maybe a purchase that you've made gets hung up someplace, but it has the correct invoice date. It was received within the time period. You're going to have expenses that post after the end date of your period, which will affect the budget. This is what I was trying to say. It's not just strictly chronological in the business process.
So I could chime in here for a minute,
Thank you.
Hannah, because I mean, the purpose of the CF1 is for those funds that you need to set aside because they're really not authorized right now. So if you've still got year one activity going, year one's not final, you don't know what's going to be, what's going to need to be requested, then you're not setting any aside yet until, you know, you can definitely use the authority you have. The whole purpose of this is to, you know, once you have a dollar amount that you know is uncertain, that's when you would, you know, put it in the CF1 so it's, you know, sitting there, it's sort of encumbered there but visible is the purpose of this. The old process, you know, it was kind of similar in that, you know, CGA was taking the best information they had to set funds outside of the budget, except it was not visible to you, which kind of left more room for trouble.
So Katie, what happens when you have allowable expenses for the first year period, but they fall, you know, in the 2 to 3 to 4 months after the end date of that first period?
It sounds like you're probably submitting a revision to the first year closeout, or your
You could move those expenses back.
Either you
to-
submit a revised closeout or move it off to a like a.
Yeah,
So
to a
like,
discretionary fund.
yeah,
I mean,
it's a
yeah.
decision of your PI. So like when to move it off, so or you can submit a revised closeout.
People are talking over, so I can't quite make it out. Is part of what someone said that you would revise a new, but you would do a new budget journal upload in which you move part of the budget back to the CF1 that you're using for whatever period, or out of that carry forward CF1 in order to bring the new balance to the correct expenses. Is that what you're saying?
No,
Like
we're
you,
saying that or submit a revised closeout. So,
and a revised budget?
No, a revised closeout.
so if there is no budget to support that, then you have to move it off to a discretionary fund, also to any other fund, other non-federal grant. So
But the budget should support it.
if it's expenses that should be there, then PI needs to move off some other expenses, because you can only have an expense that's aligning with the budget. You cannot overspend it, right? So
No,
at the-
well, was
Hi,
my,
this is Esther from CGA. I think this is a little bit complicated because, first of all, if you request a revised closeout, then we have to resubmit the SF425, which is not in the system already. So we have to request to the, the NIH specialist. I'm talking about NIH, okay? Then until they allow us to revise, then we can revise it, right? Because when you send us the soft closeout, you should include all the unliquidated. Then we will report as an unliquidated that will be included in the first year.
okay, why would there be a closeout
Soft close.
done? Why would there be a closeout done literally the month following the end of the year that you're budgeting? You may have valid expenses that go with year one that post 2 to 3 to 4 months afterwards. So I don't know why you wouldn't be submitting a final invoice to the agency. You would have the 90 to 100-day grace period, correct? So that we can make sure that we move some of the budget back to accommodate allowable expenses that post after the end of the period. I know I'm repeating myself, but I think I'm not clear, which is why I am doing that, because I want to be clear.
Well, I think if you don't have NIH awards that you manage that require soft closeouts in between budget years, this is not a process that may make a lot of sense right now, because it's standard to have soft closes. So it sounds like maybe you don't manage a lot of NIH funds that require soft closes. So maybe that's why it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, I definitely haven't had any agency have enforced no carry forward. So
Yeah, this soft closeout is a very specific process to awards that only require prior approval for carry forward. And the reason that we have it set up this way is because at the end of budget year one, if you have an unspent balance, you can't just keep spending that in year two. You have to set it aside and ask for approval from the sponsor to keep using it in year two.
And as Gwen, you mentioned, like 90 days for subawards, we only get 2 months for closing out. For soft close is the same rule apply, 2 months. So
yeah.
It depends on the award terms and conditions when you have to submit the soft close or award closeout, right? So it's not necessarily the 3 months. So if it doesn't falls within the 2 months adjustment period, it's not done, it's gone. You cannot make any more adjustment. You have to move it out to a different funding source.
It's also not uncommon when you have a subaward that you need to do the carry forward request before the end of the period.
Yes, absolutely.
So a lot of times that's part of the process, is doing your closeout concurrence and figuring out what you need to accrue for. So if you had accrued, if you had a purchase order that they're late invoicing on, you would have accrued for that. The sponsor would have been billed, and then when the invoice is paid on those original chart fields, it's fine. If it gets missed in the shuffle, I think you would just do a journal to change the CF1 and activity code so that it is now booked to the new budget period. You wouldn't necessarily have to move it off the grant if it's part of an ongoing project.
Okay, that's a really important point. But the logic there is, because I have a fund that's going to kind of have this problem that if your dock date occurred during year one, then by association, it's not allowable in year two. So someone said earlier, oh, well, you're going to have to move these expenses off to a discretionary fund or some other fund, but this could be a lot of expenses year to year. Like you can't control this in this way. You just can't control it.
But when, if you don't have carry forward restrictions, don't do this. This is not for a situation if you don't have year to year restrictions.
Yeah, no, I understand, but we're talking about when there are restrictions. But if you have expenses that posted in a calendar month of year two, but they are allowable in year one, then that should be accommodated in your final budget balance for year one. And I'm not understanding how that we can make sure we have that option. It's a really important option. I have PI who has no discretionary funds.
Yeah, if those expenses aren't coming in timely and so they don't make it in time, then it can be hard. Yeah, I mean, it's like Esther was saying, you might have to go back to the sponsor to see if you can revise that prior year. So, I mean, none of us wants to get in that position.
So wait, when does CGA have to, if there's a balance and we don't have approval for carry forward, when does CGA have to submit that final invoice relative time-wise at the end of year one? Is there a rule?
It depends on the condition, the terms. Like for, if for sub-award, we have to submit the annual final invoice within 60 days, right? And
so if there's no sub-award, just a standard.
The standard, if it's federal, and usually we have 90 days to do the self-closeout. So it depends on the sponsor's rules.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying, that we need to be able to move budget back to accommodate allowable expenses within the time frame of CGA's final invoice. I don't think there's not a rule, right? Nobody's saying that at the end of year one, you must, at the end of the month, let's say it's June 30, whatever the balance is as of July 1 must move to this new CF1 and that's it. Like
No.
y'all aren't saying that, right?
We are not asking you to move on the July 1st. You still have, at least you have 30 days or 60 days to give us the soft closeout certification. So we base on your closeout certification to process the soft close.
Okay,
and then you have to.
So we can move budget back. Are we all in agreement, please? Really important.
Well, it depends on the situation.
Yes.
And that is the reason we are asking you to map it with activity code. So that is the whole purpose of that activity code mapping.
Yes.
生气的。I want to sort of point out a research term condition of Appendix A, a prior approval matrix under NIH and other agencies. There are a lot of the transaction we do doesn't require prior approval, so you can check that. And then it doesn't mean, kind of under impression NIH is very restricted about the carry forward. But if you look at the matrix in terms of conditions, and you see a lot of things are not require prior approval. You could just go ahead do it.
Yes, that's what it said. You'd have to check the award, and if you are not clear, then you go and clarify with the SPO and CG analyst. Like for federal contracts, every award stand on its own. So, and I was not aware of that. Like, so if the balance is there, it doesn't carry forward at all. So there is no question of getting approval. It just stand on its own. Nothing gets carried forward to the next budget year. So if you are not aware of it, you might end up using that balance for the next year. So, but if you use it or you lose it. So those things, like, that's why you have to know and read the award document at the very beginning. And if you have any questions, get clarification from the SPO and CGA analyst.
Any other questions on soft closeouts?
We skipped the slide because we wanted to answer the questions. Like, thanks to everybody who participated with this soft closeout, like a meeting. Like, we have many meetings with the CGA and the SPO, and for the RE, like Hannah, me, and Kelvin and Anna. And Hannah from Share region, and Kelvin from Best, and Anne from Pros region was there. And from CGA is, like, of course, Katie, Esther, Elizabeth Chavez, and Lynn was there. And from SPO, it's Noam, Fraulein, and Ken, who joined the meetings. I don't know how many meetings we have done. We have plenty, like 5, 6 meetings probably.
So many.
Yeah, so many, we lost counts. But and everybody tried to pitch in. I think, like, I wish what Elizabeth promised BFS could do that, but we have some restrictions on BFS side, so that's why we couldn't get what exactly we asked for. But we are hoping whatever like CGA has promised, that as the BFS update will show up for the future awards, for the new awards starting November, right, Katie? Am I talking all the awards that are coming up after November, that will have the milestone page updated, that has the carry forward information that needs carry forward approval in soft close.
Yeah, it's newly available to us now, so we are rolling in the use of that.
Do we have any awards?
So as we do,
I mean, do we have any awards that we can use as an example to show? I mean, not now, maybe the artists can look at it. Like, do you have any awards that came in, new awards? Do you know? Or maybe not.
and yeah, actually, it should be showing up on your. There is a report that shows interims, and it should show up on there.
Okay.
When you're reviewing due dates. So if you're like a supervisor and looking at a large unit and have a bunch of interims and 0 soft closes, drop me a line. I just want to, I'll be taking a look from my end too, but if we've got some gaps or something, I mean, there actually will be areas where there's way less traffic this way, just because certain fields tend to have sponsors with fewer carry forward restrictions. But yeah, I want to make sure it's moving forward as intended.
And thank you, Kate. I just wanted to reiterate, this is a new process that we came up with, that we've implemented now. And so, like any new process, I'm sure there's going to be some kinks and glitches along the way. So please, if you find that you're struggling with something, or you hit a pain point, or you don't understand something, please reach out to me and Conchita or your supervisor, so we can improve the process as we work through it, you know. All right, and it's 2:56. We have 4 minutes left. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough time for me to do an IDC reconciliation demonstration. Perhaps we'll schedule another short brag meeting, like a 30-minute brag meeting later, just for that, if you guys are interested. When we send out this survey, if you're interested in seeing an IDC reconciliation demonstration, please put a comment or something to that effect in the survey form. And we can get that scheduled. Yeah, that's it. Sarah?
Great. Thank you, Hannah, for turning it over. Let's give a round of applause for our presenters. That's a hot topic. Lots of good questions that came in. So thank you, everyone, for taking your time out of your busy schedules today to attend this brag meeting. We'll be putting that link to the survey in the chat shortly. We'll also send those out in an email. So please take a minute to provide some feedback on the meeting today, make recommendations on future topics. We take those very seriously. And like I said, we'll also be sending out that survey link in an email before the end of the week. Our next brag meeting will be February 8th And we'll hear from Professor Michael Silver on the research being conducted at the UC Berkeley Center for the Science of Psychedelics. So it's going to be totally rad. So we'll hope to see you all in our next meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.